Hello there, it's Jeanette from my home studio in the UK, Farfise Ceramics, and I'm doing this video because I'm about to make a batch of candle holders, and I shared a Instagram reel and a YouTube story just of me making the previous ones, and I had so many people asking me, where'd you get the cutters, where'd you get the press molds, what candles do you put in them, how do you make them? And I actually made these after being inspired by Creations by Jazz. She does amazing stuff, always inspiring me. So she's got tutorials on them as well, but I just thought, okay, I'm going to make another 12 because I love them. I'm going to take them to my next market, and I thought I'd video them and share with you how I make them. I've just adapted it slightly to suit my techniques. There's a lot of different ways you can make them, but I've also included in the description all of the links of where you can get the various things that I've used in my video. If you're not based in the UK, if you get the description, you'll be able to get the wording from there to type it in. I think they're peony cutters, but you can check the description. You can see the link of what I've bought. So I made, first of all, some lovely dishes, not candle holders, just lovely dishes. I don't know if you can see the difference between these two. This one has got the petals upwards. This one has got the petals tilted down. I love that you can actually change them to have flutes in the flowers as well. Make them a lot more realistic. These were glazed with spectrum glazes, but I will show you my glazing as well. And then what I'm going to show you today is these, which are candle holders. So it's 2 layers, lovely glazing on them, really beautiful. And these I have managed to find some perfect little candles rather than tea lights, which I think just set it off gorgeous. Not too tall and perfect diameter for inside. So again, just from Amazon, very inexpensive. I think these worked out at in UK 70 pence each. The idea being is that the centre of here is encased. There's no gaps, so that the wax as it melts stays in there, so it's easy to take it out clean and pop another one in. That's how I've done my variation of them. But yeah, so if you'd like to see how I make them, follow along. It's just a short one. I'm sure you have seen Jazz and how she makes them as well. Thank you so much, Jazz, for all your inspiration. You make some beautiful pieces. I need to get hold of some soft white. I've not been able to get that yet, so that's what I want to try. So yeah, hope you enjoy. Take care. Bye-bye. So I've just rolled a slab of clay, and this is to 1/2 centimetre. I need to compress and rib the one side, and I find a window cleaner squeegee makes this a lot quicker to do. Now this is reclaimed clay, so I can see a few air bubbles on this, not many, that's good. Just because we're going to cut out, hopefully to make at least 6 candle holders. I need to turn that over. Now my wear board's not as big as this. Let's see how much I can get on. Okay, there. I'm going to take this end piece off. Put that for a separate project. So I find the easiest way to turn my boards over is actually to fold over the canvas and tip it over. So I'm not actually distorting the clay at all. I'm trying to keep it as flat as possible. These are the set of cutters that I purchased from Amazon, and they come as a set of 4, and I'm going to use the largest 2 for this project, and also the silicone moulds for the leaf, again from Amazon, quite inexpensive. So I'm going to make a set of 6. The cutter, I'm just literally, I tried putting a board on top to cut it, but these are slightly angled down, so I find to get a cleaner cut I'm having to rotate my hand around the edge. Now the one thing that I didn't do, which I should have done, is release the clay from the board before I start, because I can feel this already. My first 2 can't be too clever, and especially this first one, which I didn't cut very neatly. So I've got one I can use. I'll leave that there. I normally put these onto a separate board, but for ease with the recording, I'm trying to keep them all on the same board. It's making life harder for myself, but we can do it. Now, the very first time I made them, I cut them over plastic to soften the edges, but I find that's not necessary by the time you've used the texture press. It didn't actually have any difference on just a plain cut edge versus the one with the softened plastic edge. That's just my personal experience. I think a lot depends maybe on the technique of how you use the texture press. Next that I will do is add the texture. So I will take one on the base, leave it on the table, and then the point of this, I want to point towards the centre of that, but not the very centre. Place the other one on top. So what I'm looking for is that this point and this point is completely covered by the top. That's how far in, and I'm going to roll with the heel of my hand onto the centre, and I'm going to roll around. So that will soften the edge, putting quite a bit of pressure on. And that actually then softens the tip completely, hence why I said it didn't make much difference for me with the way that I'm applying the texture to actually soften the edge first and then work your way around. So this is clay straight from the bag, and I haven't let it harden off at all. So I'm going to repeat that for all of them. So the fronts and the backs all look pretty similar. So what I'll do next is create some bases for these 6. So my remnant that I had earlier, I'm going to use that. Just going to make it just that fractional bit thinner. So I'm going to get my maker's mark, dip it into some corn flour, and then press it into the clay. I put the maker's mark in first because then I can cut out so it's exactly central. So this is to add a foot to the bottom of the piece, which it's not essential to have a foot. However, for glazing, this means it's a lot easier to have something circular to glaze up to on the bottom without having to try and create your own, shape that you glaze up to, if that makes sense. I'll show you some I tried without this method, and I much prefer this method. So we're now going to apply the bases to the bottom of the flowers. So I use a serrated rib to mark the bottom. Because it's so green, the clay greenware, I'm hoping these are going to stick easily. I'm just using vinegar. More you here. you can just smooth around the edge. Now, I like to dry mine in bowls to help with the shaping. So I have some bowls that I made, just have the nice angle on the bottom. And what I do in here is I just have some kitchen roll, that paper towel that I've just cut into triangles. And I will take my flour, place it on there, and this means now I can use the paper to lift it up, place it in, and then I can just press the centre down, which that base should touch the bottom, and I can adjust the leaves with the paper, which keeps the edges nice and sharp. As it shrinks, it's going to shrink smaller, so it's not going to have any cracking because the mould is on the outside. So I'm just going to repeat that for all of them. This is why I'm only making 6, because I just have 6 bowls in this shape. I mean, any vessel could be used, and that could change the shape. But by doing it this way, I don't have to wait for the clay to go too hard to hold its shape up, and they're all of a similar diameter then, with how high the leaves, I don't know what the right word is, how high the leaves are upwards in the bowl. They're going to stay in this paper until tomorrow. So I'm not going to mess with the outer shape too much, because I can do that after I've got the centres in. So we're now going to do exactly the same and press the texture onto the centre leaves. You'll notice just how much this is, just under 1/2 centimetre in thickness of clay, but with it being so green, you can see how big the leaf goes. But it's not too thin that it's going to be super fragile. So that's where I found the thickness of the clay. I've tried it thinner, and it does do very fine leaves, but they're very fragile. Okay. So if you look in there, the size that's changed. Can you see? Let me show you. But also you can see here how rough these edges are, and let's see what they're like. After they've been pressed. So what I'm going to do next is actually make this into almost like a cup. So if it's going to hold a candle, if that candle melts, the wax needs to be held. So I'm just going to touch a bit of vinegar on each join, and then literally just do a small overlap on the bottom of each leaf. To create the inner bowl, like that. And again, because the clay is so soft, I'm literally just mooshing. I think that's our potter's technical term, to moosh. I'm just mooshing those joins, which on the smaller ones I find with my pressure of my hand pressing the texture, I'm possibly a bit harder. I don't know why, but they seem finer at the joins on these smaller ones. And I don't want it too floppy. So now we're ready to put these into the centre. I'm going to score the bottom of each one. Right, so they're all done. So now I will make sure with the tissue that they're all central and bring the centre one up slightly, maybe tilt the top of the petals out a little bit, and then check how I'm feeling about the bottom petals. You can add some little curves into the bottom petals as well. And if the centre is too wide, you can just overlap a touch more, put like a little pleat in. Like this one feels a bit thin on that one point, so I'm going to overlap that a bit more. That's a bit better. And I like a few waves in the outside leaves so they're not too symmetrical. So I tend to find if I put my finger at the back and then I'm doing that with the clay, but through the tissue, it creates a nice bit of a curl in the petal leaf. Not on every leaf, just where I feel it adds a bit of, I don't know, so they're not all perfectly symmetrical. Well, that's my aim. Okay, and then the last thing that I would do is with my finger press in the centre as I'm turning to ensure that it's stuck down, and also level the base at the bottom with the bowl. And when these are dry tomorrow, if I've got any fingerprints in that centre part, I will smooth them out with a damp paintbrush. But this is important to make sure it's really adhered to the bottom. I've got a flat base. And any edges that I'm not overly happy with, I can still tomorrow use a paintbrush. Now this one looks too floppy, so I'm going to overlap it a little bit. So I think this one, I did have one that the clay felt thinner. So, and that's what I think is this one. It just doesn't feel as rigid as the others. I've done a bit of an overlap. Now, I know you can use something to press down instead of your finger, but I feel with my finger, I can feel the clay more. So it's all personal preference at the end of the day. So I will now leave these until tomorrow and show you how I just finish them off after they've had a day drying out. So these have been drying overnight, and the fact I've got this tissue paper in makes it super easy that I can just lift them out onto the table, and the tissue shouldn't have stuck. That looks really nice. But I'm now in a position where I can just take a sponge and lightly smooth off any edges I'm not happy with, or I might take a paintbrush on some edges that I'm not happy with, and then these can dry on their own out of the forms. The idea being is that these should now be quite flat. If they're not, they're still moist enough that you can press them down slightly. So this is quite a nice stage of greenware. It's not completely dry, but I can manipulate it very, very slightly. I don't want to, because that could promote cracking. But like this one here is not that even on the bottom. There's a flat base for the candle votive to go in, so I can here just press that down with my finger. And that's the type of adjustment that I would do at this stage. I wouldn't be moving the petals because they would most surely break. But this one was a little bit wobbly. So by pressing in the centre, that's better. That's looking good. The papers I just put to one side and I reuse again. Again, this one, I'm not entirely happy that the base of this is flat or smooth, so I can take a paintbrush on the inside if I wanted to smooth it. The bowls are ready to make some more sets. I mean, you can use any shape you like at all, but I can see on here there's a few areas that I would like to just clean up, like some edges here are not refined enough for me. So it's sturdy enough, it's not too fragile for me to work with like this. You can see there's a bit of movement here. In this instance, I think the sponge is too aggressive, so I may use a small paintbrush, one with enough of a stipple on to give some resistance. I don't want the brush too long. You know, I don't want this too long, so I've chosen quite a thick one, if that makes sense, with a short bristly edge. So I can just smooth off my edges if anything I'm not happy with. I don't want any sharp edges. Check the back. So I'll do that with every one. I like the base. That means then I can glaze up to this edge here. That's going to make glazing a lot quicker and easier, and I've still got something for it to go on the kiln shelf with. And that just smooths any fingerprints off the inside. I like the veins of the leaves showing, so I don't want to get rid of those, but I want it to be that at least the centre is more symmetrical where the leaf imprint finishes. So the circle I'm going around with my brush here is lighter on the edges, so I don't want to get rid of that. But it's like if there's any textures that you don't want to keep, the glaze is going to hide a lot. but you want to perfect as much as you can at this stage, so you get a much finer finish piece. I'm not going to do much more to those. I'm just going to let those dry off and get them bisqued, and they'll be really pretty when they're glazed. So I start by doing the bases, and I'm not bothering to wax because I've got a nice circle here to use as a guide. So using the banding wheel with a loaded brush, it's fairly easy to go around, and if I do go over the edge, it's easy to wash off with a sponge. That's why I like doing these round bases on the bottom. Now on this one I have gone over. Very easy to take that top off. Nice and clean. Now this one I'm doing Rose Quartz. You do have to really make sure you get into all the nooks and crannies, but I also have to be mindful that on the bottom I don't want to have glazes that are going to run and pool on the kiln shelves. So I'll step back my second or third glaze always on the back, and on the inside I do step it back to have the colour variation, but not as much as I will do on the back because of running. So my first coat, I'll always make sure I get right down in the bottom, and sometimes I'll do a bit of a heavier coat down in the bottom of the join because I'm not really going to put the second coat down there because I don't want to have too much pooling, because then I might have frothing, okay, or pinholing if the glazes run. And I do like on these flower designs to have the variation of tone, so I quite like the fact that at the bottom there's only one coat. I can then also use anything that's pulled to pull up onto the underside, because I don't want to physically see a pool of glaze in there. So if there is, I'll pull it up onto the leaves either side. Because this is the only coat I'm really going to do quite heavy like this. Make sure the tips are all coated. And again, really making sure that you've got in every nook and cranny, because what I personally don't want to see is the bare clay with a gap shining through where I've missed glazing. So I'm always looking on the underneath as well, because depending what angle you paint it, you always miss something, don't you? An air bubble that pops after you've moved on from that spot. So pretty simple really. Just considering glaze pooling and running with the glazes that you're using. So I did 2 coats of the first base coat, and now I'm applying the top layer of colour. I use a finer paintbrush for this, not a fan brush, so that I can actually do more striking movements with the brush to create that variegated edge with the glaze. It's quite heavily loaded with glaze, and I really only do like 1 heavy coat, and then I will go over afterwards just lightly with a second coat. I don't go on the bottom of the lower petals on the underneath side,
but I do slightly underneath the top petals you'll see shortly. I go obviously on the inside edge, and I use this same application for all the different glaze combinations. I will share photographs and details of every petal votive that I've made and all the colour glaze combinations that I've done at the end of this video.
So this is my little tea light holder, used for tea lights or little pillar candles. So my modified design, I have got a circle on the base, so then I can actually glaze right up to that. It's a nice clean line, and in here I've managed to find some really nice pillar candles that fit perfectly inside. And I think that's the really nice size. I have got an Amazon storefront, so all of the tools that I use, the cutter, the press and the candles, I'll link in there if you want to see which ones I've chosen. I like that. I've done 2 in this colourway. And this is Mayco Raspberry Mist, 2 coats all over. And then over that I have done Autumn Purple, step back slightly, 2 coats, the second coat step back lightly. I think, yeah, with the candles in, they look very nice. So the way I've decided to make them is to make sure that this centre bit is completely encased, so that as the wax melts, it's like a bowl in the bottom. There's nowhere for it to seep into the second layer of petals. This one is, that's very nice, isn't it? That's very nice. This is Rose Quartz all over, 2 coats, and Poppy Fields on the tips. Didn't do any poppy hills on the back. Texture's coming through very nice. But what I'm interested in is that the Rose Quartz, which is normally a glossy glaze, looks slightly matte. So this is cone 5, but it hasn't burnt out a lot of the poppy fields at cone 5.5. This is Rose Quartz times 2 with Himalayan salt on the tips. Now, Himalayan salt is matte. Yeah, I get that. So I wouldn't have been surprised to have had it matte on the tips, but it's matte on the centre, and on the back it's like a satin finish, and that's not normally what I get with Rose Quartz. So I'll either put a clear over that. I'm not happy with them as they are. I might put a clear over it, or just put it in and fire it to my cone 6.5 is what I normally do. Still a lovely tone though, isn't it? Still a very nice tone. Flux Blossom all over, 3 coats, Poppy Fields on the tips, and then I added a touch of Honey Flux on the tips as well. I like that Honey Flux there, that's a nice colour. Those are very sweet. Oh, I like this one. That's nice. So this is, let me get the other one. So this is Flux Blossom, 3 coats all over. And then I have done 2 coats of Rose Quartz all over with Poppy Fields on the tips. Look at the back. It's got a really gorgeous richness to that, a warmth.
This is Mayco Rose Quartz all over with 2 coats, and then I've followed this with Mayco Jungle Gems Poppy Fields just on the tips with 1 coat. Beautiful, beautiful effect that this has come out. This is Amaco Flux Blossom with 3 coats all over. Then I've used Mayco Poppy Fields Jungle Gems, 1 coat on the tips, and finishing with Honey Flux with 1 coat on the tips. A much more subtle glaze combo. Amaco Flux Blossom times 2 coats all over, followed with Mayco Rose Quartz times 2 coats all over, and then add in Jungle Gems Poppy Fields on the tips, step back and add in 2 coats here to try and create those extra variegations. really beautiful. Spectrum Sangria, 1 coat all over, then Spectrum Kimchi times 1 coat on the tips, with Amaco Flux Blossom times 1 on the tips, step back further. This is Mayco Raspberry Mist with 2 coats, and then using Spectrum's Autumn Purple just on the tips with 2 coats with the second coat stepped back. Gives a very nice richness and warmth to this combination. I like this one. The last one was Mayco Rose Quartz, 2 coats all over, and then Mayco Himalayan Salt on the tips. This is the one that you saw in the earlier video that I didn't like how it came out matte. So I added some Mayco Stoneware Clear and then some Honey Flux on the tips and refired it. And oh, I love this. Gorgeous. So details of all of these glaze combos that I used, I will actually detail in the description if you want to check that out there. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd love to hear if you have a go at making them and send me some photographs of how you got on. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Bye bye.